everybody, it's Jetsy Lupa here, and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about a question that I get asked quite a lot, and it's which con should I attend? So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what kind of convention is right for you, and I will be using a lot of my own personal experience from this. And disclaimer, this is my opinion, and it still may not be the perfect convention for you, but if you've never attended some of these conventions and you want to, then at least I can give you a little idea of what they're like and if it's right for you. And if you've attended any of the conventions that I mention and you feel like you have a different point of view, please feel free to put that in the comments. I really want to help out as many people as I can. So if you have a different opinion, or maybe you can give a little bit more information from your experience, it could help somebody else. And before we get started, don't forget to check the links below to get access to all of my content. And yes, I am cosplaying as Ampharos today. I'm technically cosplaying as Mega Ampharos, which if you don't know what Mega Ampharos looks like, I'll put a picture here. But it's basically this, but with like a different tail and hair. So, and tell me below what your favorite Pokemon is. Okay, so let's start out by letting you know which conventions I've attended. I will list them all here. Now, some of these conventions I've attended multiple times, like AwesomeCon, Otakon, KatsuCon, Anime USA. I've attended those multiple times. Some of the conventions I've only attended once, like New York Comic Con or the Great Philadelphia Comic Con. And these conventions range wildly in size. So like I said, I often get asked this question, especially from people that are either new to cosplay and don't know which cons to attend, or people that want to come to the area. And if you've noticed by all the conventions that I mentioned, I am based mostly in the Mid-Atlantic region. I attend mostly Northeast to Mid-Atlantic conventions, but I am hoping to travel to more. So I'm going to kind of put these in different categories: best family convention, best convention to travel for, like bucket list conventions, stuff like that. And again, these are my opinions and my opinions only. And please, if you've attended any of these, or if you want to talk about another convention that you really like that you think would be perfect for specific people or whatever, please comment below. We can't attend every convention, and I've only been cosplaying for about 6 years. So I have a lot more conventions to attend for sure. And I also want to make a distinction between anime and Comic-Cons, because I'm going to talk about both. And Comic-Cons are more based towards comic-based characters like Marvel, DC, as well as more pop culture, so things that are on Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. And I'm not saying that they won't have anime stuff, because they definitely do. New York Comic Con had a ton of anime stuff, but they're definitely more geared towards the Western cartoons, versus anime conventions are definitely geared a lot more towards the anime genre, a lot of Japanese culture, things like that. And each convention, even within these categories, are really different from one another, and some include a lot more anime stuff than others, and some of the anime conventions have a lot more cultural programming, couldn't think of the word there, than others. So definitely each one has its own thing. So I'll start out by the best family convention, in my opinion, and this is going to be for people that have younger kids in their family, from like little kids up to like teenage kids. I think that there is definitely certain conventions that are a lot better for a family to go to together. My number one pick for best family convention out of all the ones that I've attended is definitely AwesomeCon. It is a Comic-Con based in DC, and the convention center is very nice. It's newer, it's well spaced out. The convention is also very organized. Most of the convention happens in these two big areas, like an artist alley and a vendor's area, but they end up kind of getting mixed together. It's like one giant open area. And it's also where any of the VIP guests are, where you can meet them, get autographs, stuff. It's kind of, most of the programming is all in one big room. And it's very organized. It's very much like aisles that you walk up and down, things like that. And within this big space, there are smaller spaces that are designated for certain things. Like I mentioned, there's a space just for people to get autographs from the celebrities that are attending. Then there is also a whole kids area, and I will get to that. There's also more of an area specifically for artists, and then there's a food court area right within that area. And I mentioned kids stuff, and AwesomeCon specifically has a great array of kids programming. So they'll have things like coloring contests, comic book character contests, just spaces where kids can go and do some art stuff. But yeah, it's really cute. They'll have coloring books. They'll have, I mean, from like things that little kids can do up to even like teenagers. Even I've entered in some of these like OC contests because it's like, oh, teenagers and adults. Like, it's just really fun. There's also typically a lot of vendors from Nickelodeon, from PBS, just all kinds of like kids programming networks are also there. I know they had a big She-Ra exhibit when I was there last time. They'll have face painters, people that could put glitter on your kids, usually all in this one area. And it's really, really great. And it's all pretty spread out. So even on the busier days, like on Saturday and Sunday especially, there's still enough room to get around. And there's so much for your kids to do that you can definitely make at least a whole day or two out of it. They also have other kinds of programming, such as costume contests, and they have some panels, and they're in different areas of the convention center. But it's nice because you're not running around this giant convention center all weekend. You're pretty much just staying in this one big space, and you can definitely get a lot of what you want to get done in one day. I would suggest doing Saturday and Sunday, because those are usually the busiest days, which I know you'd say, well, why do the busiest days? But if you're a family, that's when they have a lot of that programming going on. Now, if you are a family with little kids, you can attend on Friday because it's not nearly as busy, but not every vendor will be there. And the best anime convention that I've attended that I think is good for families again would be Otakon, and that is also in DC, and it is in fact in the same convention center. And the thing about Otakon that differs from AwesomeCon is that it is a lot bigger and takes place in the entire convention center, so you can have a lot of running around, and it does go until late at night, but you could just stay as long as you want to stay, versus AwesomeCon like ends at like 7 or 8 o'clock or not at night or something. But if your kids are really into anime, Otakon is going to be more where you want to go. The vendors and the artists are going to be a lot more geared towards anime genres. The cosplayers are going to be more geared towards that, but it is still in the main part. The artist alley and the vendors are all going to be in the same space that they are in AwesomeCon. It's very, very, very organized. It's not as crazy as some of the other anime conventions are that I'm going to mention, or it's just more family friendly, and they again do have a lot of kids programming as well. I'd say my runner-up for the next best like family conventions are pretty much any of the Comic-Cons. So Baltimore Comic-Con is a little bit smaller than AwesomeCon, and then the Great Philadelphia Comic-Con was even smaller. And so it really depends on how your kids are and where you live. Again, all of these that I mentioned Baltimore, DC, Philadelphia. So wherever you're the closest, you can definitely look into those. And definitely decide if your kids are going to be able to handle a bunch of people, because definitely the smaller conventions might be a better spot to start your kids out. Even as small as something like Southern Maryland Comic-Con, that's usually only for 1 or 2 days and has a max of like 1,000 people all together. The next category is the which one should I travel to? So this is again going to kind of be broken into 2 different categories. One is going to be like which conventions are worth me traveling across the country for, and then the other, which convention is it worth me traveling for, but I'm going to be bringing my family with me. So in regards to which one should I travel across the country for, my top pick of all the ones that I've mentioned from experience would be Katsucon. And that's because it's a huge anime convention. It is one of the most popular. It has one of the most popular venues out there. If you've not heard of the Katsucon gazebo, then I don't know. Anyway, I'll put a picture here of it so that you know what I'm talking about. But the venue is absolutely gorgeous. It's really unique. A big part of the venue in the hotel part is this big, huge open atrium. And there are so many gorgeous spots for photos, lots of different types of backgrounds that you can get. It's outside. You can get some gorgeous photos with the Ferris wheel in the background because there is a lot of like tourist stuff right in that area. Another thing is if you're traveling from across the country or wherever, or I've had friends travel from out of the country to this convention, you can also kind of make a little trip about it and go into DC and see some of those monuments. Now, Katsucon isn't as close to the monuments and stuff as some of the other conventions, which I'll talk about next. But definitely if you are like a young couple or you're by yourself, but you're a younger person, I think that Katsucon is great. It's a big I don't want to say the whole thing is a party convention, but it has great nightlife. It has so many different types of programming, great artist alley, great vendors area, just so much going on. And it really does bring some of the best cosplays out. And if you want to see cool cosplays and if you have a cool cosplay, like this is the place to go. I'm not saying it's definitely like the best one out there, but from my experience, I think that Katsucon is one that a lot of people want to travel to. Now, if you're more into Comic Cons, then I would say New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con are going to be your big ones. um, I can't speak for San Diego Comic Con because I haven't attended, but attending New York Comic Con, I can say, I mean, it's huge. It's like a once in a lifetime type opportunity. And I have some friends that are lucky enough that they get to go every year and they live closer to New York, and that's great. I think that it's got a lot, and it can be very overwhelming, but if you're really into Comic Con and you are going to get to do this one time, that's a great choice as well. If you do want to travel to New York City, but you're more of an anime person, there is Anime NYC, which takes place in the same venue as New York Comic Con. Now, if you are a family and you are, again, going to be traveling as a family and you want to do kind of like a convention slash vacation, I think that Otakon or AwesomeCon, again, are going to be your best options here for families. As I already mentioned, they're both really great conventions for families, depending on if you want to do Comic-Con or anime convention. But they both take place at really great times of the year for traveling. AwesomeCon typically takes place in the spring. This year is a little bit different because of the pandemic, but usually it takes place in the spring between like March and May, and that's a great time to come to the DC area. The cherry blossoms are usually blooming and very beautiful during the March-April timeframe. Otakon takes place in the summer, which is another great time to travel. But there are also a ton of hotels around, so you have a lot of different choices of where you want to stay. You can also very, very easily jump on the subway and get to anywhere you want to go in DC, and you can easily get to all the monuments within just a few minutes. So if you're looking for a convention that you and your whole family can travel to, and I know some people have done this, they've traveled with their family, they've done like one day at Otakon, then they take a couple days to go look at the monument, etc. I think it's a great way to kind of get in sightseeing and visiting DC, as well as being able to do a convention, even if you just do it for a day. The next category is the easy ability to stay at the conventions. You might be thinking like, well, is this really an issue? But it really can be. And as I said, Otakon and AwesomeCon take place in the same convention center, and there is a hotel connected to that, which is a great option, especially for Otakon, because there is an underground tunnel that goes from the hotel to the convention center that's open most of the time during Otakon. So if it's raining or really hot out, it's a great way to not have to get your costumes wet. But around that area, there are just a ton of options for hotels. Within a 5-minute walking distance, there's probably at least like a half dozen hotels or more. So there's definitely a lot of different ones to match your budget. And again, you can easily get on the subway and it drops you right off at the convention center. So as long as you don't want to change your costumes a bunch of times a day, then you can definitely go ahead and stay anywhere within 15 minutes. Katsucon and MagFest also have good options within walking distance, but they can be very, very pricey. In my experience, I've actually stayed just over the river in Alexandria for MagFest, I think twice. And it has not been so bad to either you can just Uber over or drive over, and there's a parking lot right at the Gaylord, which is where MagFest takes place. So it's another option to help save a lot of money versus staying in National Harbor. You can just stay across the bridge. For Katsucon, I do suggest staying within National Harbor because usually Katsucon is where you want to wear a bunch of costumes, but we'll get to that. The next category I would say is the best convention for doing a bunch of cosplays. My top pick is definitely going to be Katsucon and Otakon. I know I said pick, but I meant picks. Both of those conventions are very heavily cosplay oriented, especially Katsucon. Now, it's all going to depend on where you stay. And so if you're not staying within walking distance of the convention or in the hotel that's connected to the convention center, it's definitely going to be a little bit more difficult for you to change a bunch of times. For Otakon, like I said, there is a hotel directly attached to it with an underground tunnel, and it's a great spot to stay if you want to do a bunch of different costumes. Now, it might not match everybody's budget, so again, there's a lot of hotels within a 5-minute, 10-minute walk that you can definitely get for a different price and still be able to change a bunch of times. You're just going to have to take into consideration that you might have to walk about 10 minutes, but it's a great way to go outside, get some fresh air, and take a little break before you come back to the crazy convention. You also want to consider some hotels offer free breakfast, or a hotel that has a little kitchenette in the room can help save you money and make it easier to eat a snack or a meal in between the panels or cosplays that you want to do. The next category is the most chill conventions. So let's say you're not like super into big crowds, or you're not like a super big cosplayer, but you just like to go to conventions and have fun. My top two picks are MagFest and Anime USA for this. So we'll start with MagFest. Now, MagFest is a lot bigger than Anime USA. It's in the same place as Katsucon, and it's in January, so it can be cold. So you got to watch on the weather. And I probably should have mentioned that, but definitely some of these you got to watch the time of year in regards to like which costumes are you going to wear, especially if you are going to have to walk like 5 or 10 minutes to the convention. You definitely want to make sure you're not gonna freeze. MagFest is so chill. Like, even though it's pretty busy and pretty crowded, overall it's not as many cosplayers. So being a cosplayer myself, obviously I'm not talking down on cosplayers, but the more cosplays you have in a crowded area, typically cosplays can be like bigger and bulkier than regular clothes, so like it physically takes up more space. And some people bring, like, well, me as a Wings Club cosplayer, bring giant wings and stuff. So MagFest has a lot less cosplayers than a lot of these other conventions, so you definitely will have an easier time getting around. There's also so much to do, and it doesn't have to be like timed panels where you're like, okay, I'm going to a panel at 2 o'clock, then there's one at 3 o'clock, then there's one at 4 o'clock. Now, there is some of that, but a lot of it is actually just playing video games on your own time. If you're a big video game person and you're not really a super big cosplay person or anime person or comic person, MagFest is for sure the one to go to. They have game tournaments, they have all kinds of things, and there still is cosplay stuff going on as well. I find that when I cosplay at MagFest, I have a better chance of getting some good pictures within the venue because there's just less cosplayers and less photographers trying to take up the space. I have a whole vlog about MagFest. I'll post it here, and you can go to my page and find it. I also have vlogs about Anime USA and Katsucon as well. The other really chill con that I want to mention is Anime USA. It's one of the smaller anime conventions that I've attended, but it's actually my absolute favorite convention. Now, this is also a very heavy oriented for cosplay, but there's a ton of Japanese culture as well. They still have a ton of cosplay programming, and the masquerade is my absolute favorite thing to do there. It's just not as hectic and crowded as some of the other conventions, and I think that everything is well spaced out. The next category is the best conventions for taking photos. The number one I'm gonna have to say is Katsucon. Well, we can kind of mix Katsucon and MagFest together because they're in the same venue. The venue is just gorgeous. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful or more iconic than a gazebo photo or a photo in that general area. You can pick out any photo and know it's from Katsucon or MagFest just by looking and seeing that it's in the atrium. The downside about doing it at Katsucon is that there's so many cosplayers and photographers trying to use the space that it can be really tough to find a good space to do the photos. The only other downfall is, as beautiful as the atrium is, once the lights go down, it can be really tough to see in there. And so you definitely want to have a light up costume if you're going to be doing photos at night. There are a couple other areas in the convention and hotel that you can use at night that are pretty well lit. But again, in Katsucon time, it can be very crowded and hard to get a blank spot to shoot with. The other one of my favorite conventions to take photos at is Anime USA. The venue is also very gorgeous. It's a lot older of a hotel. I believe it's one of the oldest hotels in Washington, D.C. Now, the hotel has a newer part and older part. And if you go to the older part, there's some really beautiful spaces to take photos, and I'll post some examples here. There are also an outdoor garden area that can be really pretty to take photos of as well. I'll post some examples here. And there's just not as many people, so you typically have a lot easier of a time getting good areas to take pictures in. The next category is the best conventions for idols. So I've only been in the idol community for about 2 or 3 years now, and so I would say I'm definitely not an expert at all. I think that one of the best conventions for idols is Katsucon again. They do have a lot of idol programming. The masquerade usually has a ton of idols that perform, which is really great. Some of the biggest groups perform there. They also have had in the past a separate idol lounge where idols who are not participating in the masquerade can come and still perform for their friends and things like that. And it's a really nice chill area for idols to hang out. The other convention that I think is a really great spot for idols is Anime USA again. Anime USA actually has a whole idol showcase dedicated to idols themselves. It's like a masquerade just for idols. Now, the idol showcase doesn't have like winners or anything like that, so it's different from the masquerade in that aspect, but it's a great spot for idols like solo idols, group idols, cover idols, everybody to come, and it's such a fun time. Now, I've never attended Anime NYC, as I mentioned, but I know that they sometimes get big idols to come there. I believe that Guilty Kiss from Aquas was there maybe 2-3 years ago. So another great spot for idols. Again, I have not been there, but I know that they do have a lot of idol programming as well. The next category is the best conventions to party at. I'm going to say my number one here is actually Colossal Con East. And I've not attended Colossal Prime or any of the other Colossal Cons, so I know that the main one is in, I want to say Ohio, but I've attended the one that's in Pennsylvania. And they're all in Kalahari hotels. So Kalahari is a hotel that has a convention center as well as an indoor water park. I legitimately think that more people had no actual convention tickets than they did just to go to the water park. They also have late night water park passes that you can purchase on top of your regular purchase that is just for people to go and hang out like after hours. So it's typically after all the families are out. And in general, most of the people in the whole like water park area is cosplayers all day, every day, but at nighttime, it's more of like a party type situation. It's definitely the rowdiest of the conventions that I've attended. It's just so fun. I mean, like, what's more fun than being able to like hang out and cosplay in a hot tub like with your best friends late at night, having great drinks. There's also an arcade there, so again, even if you don't buy a convention ticket itself and go to any of the panels or anything like that, there's so much to do in the hotel. It's so much fun. What I want to do now is kind of give a quick little synopsis of all the conventions that I attended, just to give you like a quick little idea of what they're like. New York Comic Con was very, very overwhelming, to be honest. It was my first convention, but it was a lot of fun, but I did not stay in New York City, so I did have to take a bus in and out every day, which was kind of a little bit annoying. And so I was only able to do one cosplay per day, but that's fine because I was so new to cosplay. It was just really big and really, really crowded, and like I said, kind of overwhelming, and definitely I would say it was awesome. And if you only get to go to one Comic-Con, that's a great one. Next Comic-Con that I will mention is Baltimore Comic-Con. It's like a smaller version of New York Comic-Con and even smaller than AwesomeCon. I had a lot of fun here. I definitely think that there wasn't as much to do as some of these other conventions, but getting in and out of Baltimore wasn't so bad. Again, I did stay outside of Baltimore, but there are a lot of hotels within about a 10-minute walk. AwesomeCon I've attended several times. I really, really like this one. This is my favorite Comic-Con that I've attended. It's not like super huge and like not as big as New York Comic-Con. I think it's just the right size. There's such a good mix of anime and Comic-Con stuff as well. The atmosphere is very friendly, and the entire area within DC that this is at is very accessible, again, by the subway or so many hotels within a 5-minute walk, close to the monuments, which is fun. The Great Philadelphia Comic-Con was definitely smaller than I expected. There wasn't as much to do with some of the other Comic-Cons that I mentioned, but it would be a great first starter convention for somebody. They also had a ton of celebrities, and I actually got the chance to meet China Anne McClain here, who is from Disney Channel. She plays Uma on Descendants, as well as she's the main character in Ant Farm. And the other Comic-Con that I've attended is Southern Maryland Comic-Con. Now, this is a very tiny convention. This is a very like local type convention. I've attended this as an attendee as well as a vendor. So Anime USA is my absolute favorite convention, like I mentioned, for just so many reasons. I really love it. I love the size. I love that it's got so much going on. It has a maid cafe. The masquerade is my absolute favorite thing. They also have a lot of Japanese culture programming, which is another great way to kind of experience anime conventions in a different way. And all of the programming is very accessible. I don't think I've ever not been able to get into a panel or programming that I've wanted to get into there because it's so small. Otakon is a really great anime convention as well. I love that it's very organized and in a big convention space. It can be tiring going from this side of the convention to the other, but overall everything is pretty accessible, and the hallways never feel so crowded that you can't like get through. KatsuCon is such a fun convention. Definitely like my top convention for cosplay in general. Colossal Con East is quite a different type of experience. This, for me, definitely, I would say, is like a young adult type convention. I think that families are not going to thrive here very well. The convention itself is pretty small and doesn't have a ton of programming. I know that the convention is generally new and that they're adding more things every year, but in my opinion, it seemed like I spent most of my time in the water park. MagFest is technically like a music and gaming festival, so it doesn't really count under anime or Comic-Con, but it's such a cool experience, and definitely one that if you're a video game person or you're not really into anime or cosplay or anything like that, this is the one to go to. So I hope that this is helpful for everybody. Like I said, I get asked this quite a lot, and I unfortunately cannot speak for every convention out there, but for the ones that I have attended, I hope that this gives you a better idea. I'm Jyoti Lupe. It was so great to have you here with me, and I'll see you next time.